Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mandy Castro, and I feel like before we get started, I need to get out in front of Keith Einstein is not gone. He's still here at TCU, and he will join us for several Facebook Lives over the course of the semesters. This one happens to be for me and for my friend Trudy Connor. I serve TCU as the Dean of Undergraduate Admission. I'm going to let my friend Trudy introduce herself, and we are looking forward to answering all of your questions about financial aid and scholarships. So Trudy, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Trudy Connor, and I'm the Associate Director here in the Office of Scholarships and Student Financial Aid. I've been at TCU. I'm starting my 19th year, and I'm thrilled to be with y'all tonight.
Y'all, it's a treat to have Trudy here. She is an expert in all things financial aid. She understands the ins and the outs and the upside downs, and I know that her information is going to be so valuable to you all. Trudy, let's start with just a couple of general pieces of information. I want to start with free money, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Let's talk about scholarships, and let's talk about where students find them and dispelling all of the myths that come along with them. And as we start to get some of these questions coming through, then we'll start to field all of them.
Okay. One of the best things about scholarships here at TCU is you're evaluated for academic scholarship, which is TCU funded money, through the application process. So there's not a secondary application you have to do, or you have to look for ones in your college. You're simply applying to TCU, and then we will evaluate you, or the Office of Admission will, which is really cool. So not long after you find out if you're admitted to TCU and to what program you're admitted, then you'll find out if you've been selected for an academic scholarship. As far as scholarships from your community or outside scholarships, there's lots of funding out there. I find the most successful students, that are most successful with getting other additional funding are if they do the scholarships to their community. So your high school counselors are notifying students of that. Your local churches, your employers of parents, those kind of things are often great resources for additional scholarship money.
That's great advice. I always tell students that they need to check with not only the resources that you mentioned, but sometimes those national scholarship search sites do have awards that students actually win.
Yeah, that's true.
And I find that one of the misnomers is if I have a hard time applying for them, or if I apply for enough of them, I'm going to maybe not win, or maybe I would need to win more. And we know that students are trying to get as much free money as they can. And typically, the more you apply, the more you are told no. However, the more you apply, you are also potentially told yes.
Right. We just ask you never to pay to apply for a scholarship. That doesn't make a lot of sense to us. But if it's a free scholarship opportunity, you should put yourself out there and do those applications.
Typically, I find that students are hesitant to fill out yet another application.
True.
What I want to convey to all of the students that are thinking through how they're going to fill out scholarship applications, either this cycle or next cycle, we want them to know that if you've got a couple of good essays, then those are what you need to use to complete the scholarship applications.
Right.
But with a word of caution, when you're submitting that application to a college, make sure that it has the correct college's name on it. If it's a business, similarly, don't send your Pepsi application and it says, "I love Coca-Cola," right? Little things like that make a difference in the long run. And in order to position yourself best, use those those essays over and over again. We're not calling Baylor and we're not calling University of Southern California to see if you submitted the same application essay here and there, but it's one that you could use over and over again if you're smart about how you use it.
Yeah, just be sure.
Okay, there's a question come through that says, is there a common website for scholarships? What do you typically tell students, Trudy, when they're asking for scholarships?
Right. You can look online, and there are some large scholarship search engines that you can use. Just be careful with those. We think that trusted resources are typically going through your high school counselors or that community for starters, and then branch out from there. But there are search engines on site you can use. TCU has one called the Horned Frog Scholar Search that you're welcome to look at. A lot of the scholarship funding that TCU gets are for students who are established already at TCU, not for first year students. But that doesn't mean you can't look and see what your future is going to be like and think, oh, there's a business scholarship I might be able to apply for, or a nursing scholarship, or psychology as I develop more of a resume here on campus. And there's a link to that information on our website.
There was another question that came through. Do you offer full rides?
We in financial aid administrators love the term full ride because that means a different thing to everyone.
It does.
It does. Most of our scholarships here at TCU are tuition based. That means they either go to cover a portion or in some cases all of tuition. But we do have some special eligibility scholarships that will assist with room and board. But we are not, I don't know how to say that, but not every scholarship will include that. But we do have some for sure.
Correct.
Now, full ride tends to mean it pays every penny. So just be careful with what that means and make sure you get explanations of school. Is what dollar for dollar is it actually going to pay for?
That's a really great suggestion. Additionally, schools operate kind of differently. So some are funded in one way, others are funded in another. And you have to be careful when you're soliciting scholarships. Typically, if it's from an institution specifically, we're discounting our overall tuition cost, where there might be unencumbered funds through scholarship that say it can apply to anything. However, you might find that you're applying to scholarships and they too satisfy your tuition. And just remember, as you start to accumulate some of those awards, once the cost of tuition is met and those monies are earmarked for tuition, they're no longer applicable in other spaces. So be aware as you're submitting applications for scholarships. I did see one question that came through that was about TCU specific awards. Ours are tuition scholarships. Students are considered with the application for admission. We want academically strong students. They are academic scholarships, and you will be considered for these at the point of admission.
Right. That's great.
All right. Let's see. Are there any special scholarships for students who have accommodations for learning differences?
In Horned Frog Scholar Search, I believe there's a few that have that. That's not something we know as a financial aid office right off the bat. When you apply, we give everybody equal opportunity through the application process and the scholarship selection process. So I personally don't know that. I don't think the Office of Admission will know that either, unless you choose to write about that in your essay for admission, which is fine too if the prompt leans you in that direction. There are some state funding opportunities for some students that have learning disabilities of different kinds or physical disabilities of different kinds. However, since we're a private school, we don't have access to those funds. So that's questions you're going to ask as you're investigating doing your college search.
Those are great. Isabella had asked, what is the Chancellor Scholarship about and what requirements does it have? Maybe I'll take that one. Isabella, our Chancellor Scholarship is their top academic scholarship awarded to incoming first-year students and some transfer students. What happens on our end is students will apply for admission to TCU. This is perfect timing for this conversation. By the November 1st deadline in either the early action or early decision round. And the student will also submit an application to the Honors College by November the 15th. They undergo a rigorous evaluation for admission, and then the additional piece for scholarship is a committee evaluation. So students are then trying to differentiate yourself. Typically at that point, you're at the top tier of academics, and then that's when your resume comes into play. And we always tell you, present yourself well in your application for admission, which includes filling out pieces of your resume, including what you've been involved in, how much time you've spent doing that, accomplishments. It's your opportunity to brag on yourself. After the committee evaluation, you're able to be presented in front of by your admission counselor, another committee, which then eliminates students from the evaluation process. We will end up inviting usually around 120 students to campus to interview for the Chancellor Scholarship. After the interview evaluations are concluded and the students are scored within that process, we award approximately 40 Chancellor Scholarships for every year. Those students do get full tuition, and when we talk about full ride, remember that means something different to everyone. Trudy said, remember that it could also be tuition and fees and room and board and all the other costs that are incurred in college. Chancellor Scholarship does not cover all of that. It simply covers the cost of tuition. Okay, thanks for hanging out with chancellors. Remember, if you've already submitted your application for admission, have forgotten to do the honors app, please go back into your portal, my.tcu.edu, fill out your honors application so we can consider you for that award. Okay, Alessandra said, hello, what kind of scholarships are available for international students? Our international population also goes through the same rigorous evaluation as our first-year students and are considered for the same awards that first-year students can win. The funding opportunities are a little bit different simply because our state funds aren't going to our international students, et cetera. But you would be eligible for any academic scholarships that you could win. All right, Miss Katie, I see your question. Will TCU stack outside scholarships with TCU merit scholarships, or will TCU displace institutional aid? My friend Trudy would love to take this one.
I would. In about 99% of cases, we will stack outside scholarships with institutional scholarships and grants. There's a few cases where if you that some scholarships will interfere with other things, and that's very, very rare. So that falls into that 1% that I just mentioned. But yes, if you get outside scholarships, you usually have no issues. If you do run into an issue where you get too many of a certain kind, we will contact you and discuss which direction you want to go. And that's maybe 1 or 2 conversations a year we have. So I wouldn't let that be a concern to you. But we don't reduce the scholarship or grant until we reach that level. I wanted to skip back up real quick because if you don't mind, Mandy, Scott asked a question about combining academic and performance-based awards. And I wanted to address that because I think that's important to know that TCU offers many, many performance-based awards already. I'm sure you see on Saturday afternoons and evenings that we're big into football here, but we also, athletics is a big way to, right, go Frogs, to earn performance-based awards on your special talent or ability. But we also have areas like theater and dance and multiple disciplines within music. We have graphic design, studio art, interior design, anything that takes a special skill or ability that I do not have that you may possess. Those can be stacked with academic awards also.
That's fantastic.
Scott?
Okay, let's take a look at Samantha's question. Okay, this is kind of getting into some parts that we're going to want to learn a little bit more about. But she said, okay, is merit scholarship from TCU different from institutional aid? And you just spoke these words in the sentence, and I think it's worth clarifying.
Sure.
So maybe we can answer Samantha's question.
A merit scholarship is institutional aid, but that means money that comes from. And we always describe this in our office as we have buckets of money. I know that sounds like that would be great to work here. I don't actually see the money. It's all in the system. But merit scholarships are based strictly on the student's academic performance. So whether you and your family make $10 a year or you make $10 million a year, you're evaluated for those merit awards. When we look at institutional aid, typically what we're talking about is students who apply through applications for financial aid, whether the CSS profile and the FAFSA, we'll talk about in a little while. And you actually do an application, and we evaluate your family's financial situation to determine a student's eligibility. So some students get money from both buckets of money. Some just get merit, and some just get institutional.
It's a great explanation. Thank you.
Sure.
Fabiola asks, do we have to submit ACT and SAT tests to be considered for TCU scholarships? I really appreciate this question because in the age of test optional, many schools have treated the usage of a test score differently. For instance, some may say you can be admitted without a test score, but in order to receive a scholarship, you must submit one. TCU has what we call a do no harm policy. And in that policy, we say, if you choose to use your test scores, we will consider them. If you choose not to use your test scores, we will consider your application without those. I want you all to know that we have awarded students in every scholarship tier that we administer, students with and without test scores. There's not a difference there within. However, if you submit to us a test score, and for instance, your scholarship evaluation is decreased by your test score, and if we looked at your scholarship eligibility without the score, it would increase by a level. What we're doing on the back end for those who submit test scores is we'll evaluate your application for scholarship with the test score and also without the test score. The higher of the two awards that you would earn is the one that you will receive. So wonderful question. You do not have to submit them if you do not want to use them. However, if they're important to you and you'd like to be considered under the test consideration, by all means, submit those to us and we're happy to consider your application with the test scores. Andrea says, can you touch on the Chancellor Scholarship? And I think we've already done that. So we'll move to Marco's question. Should I start applying for scholarships before I make a decision on where I'm going to school?
Many scholarships have deadlines before you're going to make that decision. The national commit date for any school in the United States is May 1st. So you may have a scholarship deadline of December 1st and they want you to apply. And there's nothing wrong with that. Go ahead and apply and do that. And then at some point after you find out that you're a recipient of a scholarship, they'll ask you what school you're going to. Most scholarship organizations, reputable scholarship organizations, won't actually hand you the check. They actually mail it to the school and to make sure it's applied to your educational expenses in that way. So they're going to gather that information from you once you make your choice.
Thanks, Trudy. This question is going to be punted to you. There's a question on federal work-study jobs.
Okay.
I know that even some of those students who had submitted questions before, like to prepare us, had been interested in working on campus, work-study jobs, and specifically, what is the eligibility threshold?
Okay.
And what on-campus jobs are available to students who don't qualify for work-study but still need to supplement with work?
Okay. I'm happy to talk about work-study. Federal work-study program is a job creator. It allows universities like TCU to open up more positions on campus than we actually have funding to pay. So the federal budget pays 75% of every student's wage that participates in the program. So if you're making $10 an hour, TCU only has to pay you $250 and the federal budget pays $750, which is really nice. So it's a job creator. So there's lots and lots of jobs on our campus that pay using the federal work-study budget. We also have jobs on campus that don't require you to fall into that category in order to work on campus. So just because you might not qualify for federal work-study doesn't mean you can't work on campus. There are both kinds of jobs available. Those who qualify for the federal work-study program are students who have need eligibility. And need eligibility is evaluated through my office, the Office of Scholarships and Student Financial Aid. We're going to take your data from the FAFSA and the CSS profile, run it through some pretty complicated equations, and determine what eligibility you have for these programs. So we have some slides that we can show in a little while that talk about what an aid offer might look like. You don't have to put those up yet, but on that, it might show that you're going to get federal work study. And if you have that award when we offer it to you, you know that you can do one of those on-campus jobs that does require that category. Again, there's lots of jobs on campus that don't require federal work study. You can work. There's also a lot of places in the community surrounding our campus that employ TCU students. And it's a wonderful way for you to chip away at your monthly expenses that you have while being a student. So it's a great way to spend some time. Also, it looks good on a resume. It connects you with your TCU community. It lets you know other faculty and staff members that you may not have known. We employ work study students in my office. They're great. My husband works in athletics. He employs federal work study students. So admissions, of course, has tons of them. So it's a really cool program.
Well, and I have to say that question came from Natalia Cherry, who's my neighbor and a faculty member in our Bright Divinity School. So, hey, neighbor.
Awesome.
Thanks for fielding that question. Laura asks, are the tiered academic scholarships listed on your website guaranteed if a student meets the GPA and test score levels? Just to make it clear as mud for you, Laura, no, they aren't. Let me explain a little bit about what that reflects. I know that this can get complicated and confusing, so this is worth taking a minute to actually digest. So what is reflected in the academic scholarship tiers on our website is a reflection of what students earned last year. So if you're looking at that, that's representative of the pool of applicants who were considered for TCU scholarships in the past year and what qualifying criteria they met in order to receive the awards. Typically what happens is we make admission decisions without knowing any type of scholarship eligibility. And then once the admitted students are processed through the pool, there are some cut scores that start to emerge based on the academic rigor in your curriculum, your unweighted GPA. We take away any non-academic courses from your academic grade point average. And so we're looking at that for consideration. We're also taking a look at the major that you've chosen, et cetera. And many of these dump into a TCU specific algorithm that calculates a scholarship score for you. And then those scholarship scores will drop into, like Trudy was saying, in financial aid, they have several different buckets. These are scholarship buckets, if you will. And then what we report out is the winners of the scholarship in tiers based on last year's applicant pool. If we see a whole bunch of students who applied to TCU this year with a 4.0 plus, and they've done all the hard courses and they have stellar test scores and the like, then those students may increase the overall pool for this year. However, we normally end up with a pretty stable applicant pool from year to year. But we have seen years where it's changed a little bit. I will also add that we don't set the scholarship dollar thresholds until typically right around this time. So within the next couple of weeks, we'll know for sure, for instance, the dollar amount that goes with a Founders Award or with a TCU scholarship or one of the other levels. So I hope that answers your question. I think it's worth us talking through because it can be confusing, especially when some schools, especially those that are funded by state funds, have specific test score and GPA requirements and or combinations thereof that would qualify a student for an award in or out. Similarly, like they do for admission, we do a holistic review for scholarship in addition to the holistic review for admission. Okay, moving through. Henley says, what % of your applicants receive scholarships? Any idea, Trudy?
Honestly, I do not know the percentage off the top of my head in the last year.
In the past year, it was around 75% of our students received scholarships. Okay. So opportunities are good. We want you to put your best foot forward for these awards and also know that you are considered for them when you apply for admission.
75%, that's pretty good.
It is. How many Dean scholarships are there and how much does it cover? That's from Scott. Scott, there's not a set number of Dean scholarships. There's a budget in the pool for Dean's level awards. and they're administered based on the scholarship scores. This past year, the Dean's Scholarship, if I'm not mistaken, was $25,000 or $27,000.
27.
And that's not quite half tuition, but it's getting pretty close.
Mhm.
Okay, I know that oftentimes families ask me if they're applying in certain decision rounds, are they considered for the same scholarship and financial aid awards? And I see that that's coming through here as well. I just read it. Let me see where it is. Who asked that question for me? Anyway, I will figure out who asked if they were considered for early decision. It was Shanna. If you apply for early decision, does that affect your chances of being considered for a scholarship? Do you know the answer, Miss Trudy?
I don't think it changes your
You're
opportunity
right.
for scholarship. I think you're evaluated based upon you no matter when you apply.
Exactly. You
Like
are
a
eligible for the same scholarship and financial aid. Did you like my ding?
I did. Thank you.
Same scholarship and financial aid opportunities, no matter which of the decision rounds you choose to apply with. So thank you for the question, and I'm glad I found the name in all of them. Y'all are busy asking questions. We could be on this thing for all night long, it looks like. So Carol asks, how soon after the student receives their acceptance letter will they receive notification of any scholarships awarded from TCU? That should be instantaneously. Carol, it is our priority to get students admission decisions and and scholarship offers on the same day. Most of the time that happens. If not, it's within usually 24 hours. Their financial aid application will typically, their financial aid notification will typically lag after that. I know we have started on the scholarship front. We're nearing halfway through our time. I'd like to pause on this for just a second because I know some students are really interested in helping to complete their financial aid opportunities at TCU. Trudy, let me punt to you a question about the applications for financial aid.
Okay.
Can you walk us through what you need to do and in what timing in order to apply for the rest of the funds outside of just scholarship consideration?
Okay. TCU does ask that you file 2 applications to apply for aid. Again, this is not academic scholarship. This is for additional funds in addition to any academic scholarship you receive. The first is the CSS profile. In that form, the application actually opened in October, so it's ready to go. You can see on your screen, we've listed the profile code for TCU. And CSS profile is a secondary application for aid, and we use it to determine your eligibility for institutional aid. So TCU funded dollars. So you might get an academic scholarship and then you get a TCU need-based grant, and that's the form we're going to use to evaluate you for that. After you've done your profile, we also need you to file the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And unless you never read social media and never go on the internet and look at news, last year was a process where the Department of Education decided to roll out a new product for the FAFSA in a new design, and there were some hiccups. So typically this application opens in October, but they delayed it, and it's scheduled to open December 1st. So that's the first date you're going to be able to go file your FAFSA. So my suggestion is go ahead and file your profile. If you have other schools you're applying to, you can put multiple schools on it also. And you can do the same thing with the FAFSA when it opens. You can put multiple schools and it'll go to those schools that you're applying to. But that's the code for TCU that we've displayed. But the FAFSA is an application that the first thing that you're going to do is set up an FSA ID. And that means it's going to basically be your username and password, but they call it an FSA ID. And you're going to do that as the student. And then your parent is also going to fill out an FSA ID. If your parents are still married to each other, only one parent needs an FSA ID. If your parents are separated or divorced and live in separate households, then more than likely you have to determine which parent you're going to file your FAFSA with. And then that parent and there's the FAFSA application helps you do that. You don't have to pull that out of thin air. We can help you determine that too, but it's going to walk you through who you should file your FAFSA with. And then that parent will fill out FSA, have an FSA ID. If you're not the first child in your family to go to college and your parent has an established FSA ID, they can use it again. Okay, so that's an upside. It's reusable. The profile, I'll touch on this, does ask for information on the parent you live with, and if your parents are separated or divorced or never married and do not live together, then it asks for the non-custodial parent information also. So there's lots of information on their website about that, and there's some on ours too, and we're glad to answer any questions.
That's great information. We do anticipate that the FAFSA opens on December 1st of this year. So if you are a senior going through the financial aid process, Trudy gave you homework that you may not have picked up on.
I did.
To create your FSA IDs.
Right.
So
and you can do that now. You don't have to wait on the FAFSA to open to do that.
That's a good suggestion. Additionally, the CSS profile is open right now, and she'll give you homework for that as well.
Yes. I'd love for you to go ahead and get that done. It's just one of those things you can get out of the way. I've been the parent of 3 kids that have all graduated high school, and y'all just get busier as the months go on in your senior year. So if there's one thing you can check off the box, the profile is one you can do now.
That's fantastic advice. I had a question about the timing of the profile and the FAFSA. Sometimes this can get confusing, and I wouldn't bring it up, but I've been asked at least 3 times this week.
Okay.
Because students have emailed me and said, Mandy, my profile is not showing up in my student account, but they're sending me a screenshot saying I submitted it. There are different aid years that you can use when you're applying for financial aid. Can you talk to the students who are graduating this year about what they're going to, so they're seniors in high school, so they're graduating in May.
In May of 25.
May of 25. Which application do they need to use?
You're going to file the application for the 25-26 academic year. The 24-25 is still open for students who are late applicants for aid. So we need you to file the 25-26 application. The same thing with the FAFSA. When you go in, it's going to say to you, which year do you want to file? So just think, I need to start with the year I'm graduating high school. That's the easiest way to remember that.
That's a great way to remember it. So if you're not seeing something in your financial aid portal or in your checklist from TCU, and you think that you've submitted it, that might be something to log back in and double check.
Right.
Okay, Trudy, talk to me just about when a student receives a financial aid award, they typically see quite a bit of information. Talk us through what you would see on a financial aid award. And then I have another couple of questions for you as they start to come in.
Sure. We're required by federal rule to disclose certain information to students on an award letter. Okay. So sometimes it can make the award letter extremely busy. So bear with us when you see it. We didn't decide we wanted to put every word we could put on there. But we're administering federal and state funds, so we follow their rules. That's how that works. It gets more money to our students. But one thing we're required to put on there is we have to list how much the school costs. So we ask that you do your homework on that even before you get your award letter, to research on your schools that you're applying to see how much they actually cost. I call that the sticker price. Okay. And we can show some slides here in a minute, but about comparing sticker prices. But the award letter will have on there how much the school costs, and then it will go into detail and list any aid that you've been given from the school so far. So it's going to list an academic scholarship if you're receiving one. It then will ask list any need-based grants or scholarships you're getting from the university. If you're from Texas, there may be a state grant. If you are, and if you're not from Texas, that's okay. We just increase your TCU money to offset it. Just comes out of a different bucket. Y'all are going to go, the bucket lady. Okay. It's not the greatest nickname, but okay. I'll be her if I have to be. It's going to list if you're eligible for federal work study, and then it's going to give you loan options. And loan options and federal work study are fall in categories that we call self-help. And that means that you're able to either work and or borrow funding to assist you in chipping away at the total cost of your education.
Thanks for that explanation. We have a question that came in from Monique that asked, what happens if we send you the CSS profile, but we have a major change in our assets by the time we file the FAFSA?
Okay. Between the filing of when you file, I think in either situation, you would have to contact the financial aid office and speak to one of our financial aid advisors, your assigned financial aid advisor to start with. We have a special circumstance application that we can give you. And on that, you can explain what the differences are. If we see big discrepancies on the two applications, like if you put on one that we see this a lot, believe it or not, people add extra zeros. And on one application, they say they make $100,000. And on the other one, they say they make $1 million. And we go, how that doesn't quite compute. So we will then reach out to the family and ask questions, but don't leave it up to that. Don't wait until we find it. You can reach out in any change in your income or assets or situation. You can reach out to us and discuss it with us, and we can tell you if it's beneficial for you to file an additional application, which is a special circumstance application. We do ask for documentation of those situations. We ask questions about, what happened, and that's fine. You are, when you're filing the FAFSA and the profile, you're looking at 2 years ago. So we're not going to say, tell us if you got a raise, but we're going to let that trickle out as you go along. But we are going to, if you have loss of income from 2 years ago to now, that's the way you're going to explain that to us.
That's a good explanation. So FAFSA and profile, you kind of snuck this in. They're reflective of 2 years ago. So remember what was happening in 2022. And then if things have happened, if things look differently now, then that might be an opportunity after you've received your aid notification to reach out to the school, correct?
Right. That's correct. Right. We can't do anything now until your applications are in and you've been admitted. We cannot see your data. We do that intentionally. We don't want your privacy invaded in any way. You release that. You give us a release through your applications once you're admitted for us to see your data. So if you're not admitted or you don't complete your application for whatever reason, we're never going to see it. So we can't have those individual conversations yet. But as we go into spring and you've gotten your admission and we move forward and you've been able to file your FAFSA, we're ready to talk to you.
Fantastic. That's great. Trudy, what happens to somebody who submits all of the documents? They think they've done it all correctly, but they never get an aid award.
Mm-hmm. You should call us. It should be a reasonable time. We typically have to wait until the Department of Education releases some updates to us in January to start the process. So that means our system has to then fix all that stuff, and then we begin that process. So it can be late January, early February before you'll hear anything. If you are an early decision student, though, you're going to get a preliminary offer based upon your profile you've submitted in December. And that way you can make that decision by
January 15th,
which is the ED decision date. So that's why we do this together. She knows their dates. I know our dates. So we're going to use your profile to make that decision. Then you're going to file your FAFSA. Then you'll get your official everything signed, sealed, and deliver award letter after we're able to do that in February or so.
While we're on the,
I'm sorry, to answer your question, was if it's March and you fill everything out in January and you're starting to be nervous, just email us and say, what is there something I need to do? And I can get on my soapbox just a little bit. Once you've applied, we communicate through your TCU portal that you have, and we're going to ask you for things we need. And sometimes we can't do your aid until we have those things. So as a student, we need you to check that portal. And if you have questions about what we're asking for, we're here to answer those questions. Sorry.
No, that's great. It's helpful to know how to receive information so that we can all stop in the same place to find it. Let's talk about somebody mentioned, I think it was Deborah, is the CSS new if we have older children in college, or can we use the same one?
No, you have to file a new profile for your new student. It's individual to the student and will only come to us if we have an admission record. So you would have to file a new one.
And then Alan asked, what if there's no custodial parent?
Mm-hmm. Hey, Alan, there are lots of students out there that are like that, and they have complicated situations. It might be best if you review the FAFSA application to see what it says about your specific situation, and then call and talk to somebody like me or me. You can call me Alan, and we'll talk about what your specific situation is, and then we'll get you down the right path.
Okay. Micah said, we already did our FAFSA, student and parent, with separate IDs. It's complete, so we still need to hit submit on 12/1, or will it automatically be downloaded into the system on that date?
Okay, the profile, yes, you can go ahead and do. But I'm a little concerned about you being able to do the FAFSA because that application is not open for the correct year. So it looks like you might have done the previous year's FAFSA, which is the 24-25, and you need to do the 25-26 if you're applying for admission for fall of 25. Go back to your FAFSA application and check that. The answer in a nutshell is you always have to hit submit. It won't automatically send it out. So we'll need you to go back and check and see what you did. If you get tripped up, you can let us know and we'll try to help you. Also, the FAFSA itself, the federal website, you can check on there and look at their FAQs, and they also have a hotline you can call.
Great. Okay, Trudy, Noelle asked, do both divorced parents need to fill out a CSS profile? It's a great question.
Yes. The answer is yes. Not separately though. So what's going to happen is your student is going to go in and start a CSS profile, and then they're going to invite their parents to fill out their portion of that application. One invitation will go to one parent and the other invitation goes to the other parent. And when they fill it out, they fill it out for themselves, and if they're remarried, their spouse, in both circumstances. If they're not remarried, it'll be just the other parent. Okay. So that's what we call the custodial section of the FAFSA and the non-custodial. So you can't see what she puts in or he puts in or they put in or whatever. It doesn't share data. The only person who can see it is financial aid administrators. So you don't have to know what they make, if that kind of thing. That's always a question we get. They don't want to share their information because the other person might see it. But so it is private between the two. Your student can't see it either. So that's is kept from them also. But yes, we will ask for information on both sets of parents.
Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Kaden asked, if accepted for early decision, will you know your FAFSA and CSS aid package immediately? Kaden, if you're admitted early decision and you have indicated an interest in financial aid, you would have also submitted the CSS profile. If you have applied as early decision and have not done that, please go back in and do that immediately and submit that to us. We will get you a financial aid award that is based on your profile information. And once your FAFSA comes in, we'll revise the aid package and make sure that we've included all of the potential funding sources that we can provide you.
There's certain things when we know what you're going to get from the federal application. We know you're going to get a certain amount of loan based upon your income, not your income, your academic level, which is first year. You're going to get a certain amount of work study if you're eligible. You're going to get a certain amount of Pell Grant if you are eligible for Pell Grant. So we can estimate a lot from your profile.
Fantastic.
So that's what we do.
Trudy, David asks, who are the financial aid officers?
Okay. Well, I'm a financial aid officer. We're actually staffed by 21 people in our office. But we have financial aid advisors in our office. There are 3 of them. One is named Abe, and then we have Lauren, and we have Mitchell. And they're actually divided by your student's first letter of their last name by who they're assigned to. So, well, I've got a cheat sheet. Abe is A through F. So if your student's last name starts with A through F, and then Mitchell is G through M, and Lauren is N through Z. And you can find that information on the TCU Financial Aid website.
Also, to make it easy for you, when you're admitted to TCU, in your My TCU portal, you'll find access to your admission counselor's name and number and your financial aid officer's name and number. So we're here to help you. We want to make this process as easy as possible.
Really a lovely photo.
Monique says, but the assets on the profile are present day, correct? Even though the income and taxes are from the year before?
Correct. As of I think it says as of today. As for current value, that's correct.
So while we're on the topic of assets, I get asked questions like this all the time. So does my retirement count as an asset? And what if I'm withdrawing from a fund, like a pension or early retirement or something like that? Can you talk us through what may and may not qualify in some of these categories?
Retirement accounts you don't report those as an asset on your FAFSA. We do asset on the profile, but it doesn't factor into the calculation. They're looking for pure assets when they're asking for on your applications. So additional real estate, you have stocks and that kind of assets, or cash accounts, whatever you have, or you have money markets or whatever. I don't know all the words, but that's what they're looking for. And, retirement accounts, you can't, if it's not in a true retirement account, you can't say it's for retirement and not report it. I always say if it takes a penalty, if you're going to pay a penalty, if you withdraw it early, then that's a retirement account. Otherwise, it should be disclosed on your profile and on your FAFSA.
That's great information.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to shift gears really quickly. And Kimberly, we will get to your question about scholarships being available once you're a current student. Yes, ma'am, they are. That Trudy mentioned at the top of the hour that there was the Horned Frog Scholar Search, and the Horned Frog Scholar Search, let me search it. That's the way that students will access any awards for continuing students at TCU. It's a one-stop shop. It houses them all in one place, and it's something that we will spam them to try to get them to apply for. Mm-hmm. I would like to talk through just a couple of different scenarios. Families stop in our building all the time. They see us at events or out on the road, and they talk about the difference between costs of schools and can I afford to go to TCU? We know we've got a big sticker price, but we also have ways that students are accessing additional funds. Trudy, do you think that you could maybe walk us through a scenario by which a student is looking at a less expensive school and a more expensive school and show us how that might shake out?
Sure. I think we have an example of that on a slide that we can put up. But there we go. We have a less expensive school in our scenario and a more expensive school. And I just used round numbers because that's kind of math I like. But as you can see, when we're looking at cost of a school, we're looking at tuition, fees, room, and a meal plan. Now, those are direct costs. So that is actually what you're going to see on the bill you receive to pay. So as you can imagine, you get a bill just like an electric bill to pay for college. And it's going to come out. Usually in most, I don't know of a school who doesn't do this, but you pay per semester or per term. And you would see that the tuition is charged separately, and then fees, and then room, and then your meal plan. Okay. There's also what's called indirect costs, and we'll get to those in a minute. But as you can see at this example, our tuition at a less expensive school is $7,000, and a more expensive school, it's $35,000. Significantly different. So we have direct cost of $20,000, and more expensive school, $53,000. So I don't think there's anybody on this tonight who would rather receive a $53,000 bill than a $20,000 bill. But what we can do, though, is that's where your financial aid and scholarships from schools come into play. And our goal is to work with students and families through scholarships and need-based aid to discount that cost. So maybe you end up paying the same as you do at a less expensive school. Can you go to that next slide for me? Okay. These are other costs. So books and supplies, travel expenses, personal expenses. We're required to put these into your cost of attendance, and we're able to offer aid using these fees too. So these are things that you're going to actually pay out of your pocket, but you can get reimbursed through financial aid to help you with those. Okay. Go ahead to the next slide. So this is a sample of what award aid what gift aid may look like for a less expensive school and a more expensive school. And as you go down column by column, you can see where we're going with this. You can see that your federal grant is going to be the same. Regardless of where you go to school, if you get a federal Pell Grant, it's going to be the same amount. The same thing is true for state grants. We typically award at the same values. So you can see the state grant is $3,000. Institutional grant funding and academic scholarships are where you're going to see a major difference in the dollar amount that's offered by those schools. So more expensive schools are going to offer bigger funding from institutional grants, and they're going to offer larger academic scholarship amounts, just because we know how much our costs are, and we want to work with students on paying for that amount. Okay. So you can see that gift aid at a less expensive school is $14,500, but the more expensive school is $49,000. So we also receive self-help. I mentioned that earlier. We call it self-help. You get work study at both schools, and then you also get subsidized loan, meaning subsidized means the interest is paid by the government while you're in school. The amount a first-year student can get is $3,500. So on the next slide, we're going to compare what the costs are for both schools. So $25,000 and $60,000. You got gift aid of $14,500 and $49,500. Your self-help makes it so your unmet expenses at both schools are the same. So that's why we talk to parents all the time at our prospective student programs about sticker shock. And I always compare it to when you go car shopping. As much as you might want to buy that wonderful luxury, whatever brand car it is that you want to do, that some families would have to live in it in order to afford it. But when it comes to financial aid and the available options we have to help students that have the need eligibility to that we can offer our assistance, we can discount that private education to a point where maybe it costs the same as going to a public school, or in some cases it ends up being less expensive. So the only way, and you can stop the slide, the only way for you to know where you fall is to do the applications. So to file your profile, to file your FAFSA, and let us make that aid offer. And then you have things to compare, and you compare apples to apples at that point.
Fantastic. That's such a good example. I know that it's comparing a less expensive school to something with a much higher sticker price can be really intimidating, and just knowing how the aid works is super helpful. Let's see. Olga asked, are we required to live on campus the first year? Actually, Olga, we require students to live on campus for the first 2 years. There are some releases from living on campus if students are living at home with their families within a 20-mile radius of TCU. really, when you live on campus, you want to be here. You're part of our student body. You're part of our student life. You're not trying to meet family obligations at home, and we want students to be here if at all possible. Michelle asks,
I love it, by the way.
yeah, which forms of aid need to be repaid? And I think that you had just mentioned something to this end.
Yeah, only loans need to be repaid. So if you get a scholarship, you get a grant, work study funding, all of that is money you don't repay. The only thing you will repay if you choose to borrow to fund any shortage you have in your tuition or living expenses.
This has been super helpful. I love that we've gotten through the scholarship process, that it can include all of these different sources, including your applications for admission, online scholarship search sites, banks, family businesses, tribal affiliations. If you're a veteran, the VA services office.
Yes.
We forgot to mention them in the
I
earlier.
forgot VA. I'm sorry. Forget that.
A yellow ribbon program that we want to help connect our students to. If you've got a post 9/11 GI Bill, your students can use that for college here. I know we do get questions from time to time on the Hazelwood Act. We are a public institution, and unfortunately, those dollars won't apply to TCU. But if you do have other funding sources, then we'd love to be able to explain those and connect you to the VA certification specialist that's in our registrar's office. I do want to round out our time together with a couple of questions that I get regularly. Students often ask me, Mandy, I've been awarded a scholarship and I took a test again, or I have updated grades. Can I be reconsidered for an additional scholarship? The answer is yes. We will look at your application up until February of your senior year. So if you've taken a test within that time frame, you can send the updated test score to us, and we would be able to reevaluate your application to see if you met eligibility for the next tier. We don't just automatically bump students up, either for good grades or something else. You have to actually move from one tier to the next. So sometimes it can be disappointing if you've turned in new information, but you stay at the same scholarship tier. So I want to be forthright with that. Additionally, students find both Trudy and me, and they say, another school gave me X amount of money. Can you match it? And while we want to give you all the money that you can receive, we don't have the same budgets as other schools. And that's a really complicated conversation, because I think sometimes the dollar amount communicates how badly a school wants you to be there. Mm-hmm. And really, when we offer you a scholarship at TCU, we want you to be here. And this is the amount that we can offer you in order to communicate that. So although we would love to be able to match other schools' award offers, typically that isn't something that we're able to do because our budgets just differ so vastly from other schools. I will say, continue to submit the applications for financial aid. You get homework doing the FAFSA and the profile. The FAFSA, you'll just be able to create your FSA ID. The profile you'll be able to complete right now if you're a senior in high school, or a transfer student even. You can go ahead and do that piece of the puzzle. Transfer students who might be joining us in the spring semester can also fill out the FAFSA. That FAFSA is available. So I think that we might have covered most of what's been discussed just in short order. Can you recap any dates of acceptance and merit scholarship decisions? Is the last question that came in from Kevin. And yes, I don't know that we even mentioned this, so thank you for bringing this to light. Our applicants who have applied for the November 1st deadline will receive their admission decision and scholarship decision in early to mid-December. Depending on the decision round, they'll get decisions typically around the middle of the month. Now, if students have applied for regular decision or early decision 2, they won't even be considered for admission until after February 1st. So if your students might have done an application that was in the later rounds, we're not even going to look at them until that time, but they'll get those admission decisions and scholarship decisions typically in mid-March. That should give them enough time to be able to take one last look at TCU and see if we're the institution for them. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully you've learned something from us today. And we hope to see you on campus. We'd love to help you out with your questions on admission and financial aid. And thank you for spending time with us tonight. Go Frogs!